Hey everyone, welcome back to another lesson. So in this one, I just want to quickly go over PyCharm a little bit. I want to explain some of its features, some of the useful stuff that you can learn. And also, one of the things that you want to remember is that the best way to learn something is to just do it. And as we actually are going to start using PyCharm a lot more, you will learn about its features more and more. I'm just going to go over some of the basic stuff here to show you how interesting and powerful this software is. But again, you're going to learn more about the more complicated stuff of this software later on as well. All right. And one of the things that I wanted to mention as well before we start is that moving forward, we're starting to program on IDEs and we're becoming a real programmer. It kind of, for me, it felt like when I was when I was learned to write, or read and write, and it was back in the days I was writing with a pencil. But then after I was growing up and going to other going to the next classes and everything, I would start writing with pens. And it is like something that feels like that you're moving away from the web-based IDEs and going into your local IDEs, which are actually a lot more powerful, more capable, and they can do a lot more interesting stuff. So that's really what it feels like for me. And it's something that it should get you excited, because we're getting to really more interesting and complicated and powerful programming stuff. So moving forward, we're going to be using IDEs. Mainly I'm going to be using PyCharm, but from time to time I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code as well, which is something I'll talk about in the next video. But with that being said, let's get into it. So I want to talk about a few interesting stuff that you can actually do with PyCharm, which are really cool. And for example, the first one I like is the fact that you can actually spell check. So on PyCharm, you can actually you can actually, for example, when you type a comment, for example, this is a comment, you can actually spell check. So like if I get the comment wrong, it actually is going to tell me that, hey, look, this is a comment, were you trying to write comments or typo? So it tells you you got a typo. Now this is actually interesting and very useful. Let me tell you why. When you actually work with data structures, especially in Python, when you work with like names, addresses, and things like that, spell checks can be very, very useful. So right now, as see, it's like, it feels like the most useless thing in a programming language, or a programming development environment, like having spell checks, really, right? It doesn't mean anything that much, but when you actually get into more complex programs, like working with data structures and things like that, it can be very, very useful to have something that's going to check your spelling. So yeah, you can actually replace it with comment. There you go. So just like that, again, that's one of the interesting features. Another one is actually the split screen. So like as we develop more complex programs, obviously we're going to have a lot more code. And one of the things that you want to do is sometimes you want to be able to kind of code on this, like at the same time, or look at the few codes at the same time. And you can actually do this with PyCharm. So for example, I have another file here. And one of the things I can do is, first of all, we can actually tab it. As you see, we got multiple tabs here, which is really, really cool, right? So we can actually go through different tabs. But also I can actually right click on it and go split, and I can, for example, split it to the right, and there you go. So just like that, I have both of my codes here open. I can actually program at the same time. I can look at it, I can pull up some functions and stuff like that. So really, really cool stuff. And again, you can have multiple of them if you want. Again, it's just like I think you can have like 4 or 5 of them here. But anyways, it's a pretty useful feature. Another thing I want to show you is the built-in linter function. So like again, one of the things about Python is that it is good to actually follow a style. So I'm going to leave a link for you to this, by the way, so you can check it out. But this is essentially the Python style guide, in the sense that when you program in Python, you want to follow a certain style so your code is readable to other people. At the same time, your code is really clean. And one of the things is that it can be a little bit complex, and especially if you're writing a really big code, like a massive project, sometimes you can like miss some stuff. You can actually make some mistakes with your styles and all that. So with the PyCharm, one of the things it does have is actually it has a built-in linter or style guide system. So it actually checks for example, for the max line length, or it checks for, indentations. For example, if you remember, we were talking about indentations before. There are two types of indents. There's the comma and there's the tab. But in PyCharm, it doesn't matter really, because it follows a certain style. It goes with, I think, spaces, but tabs and spaces, it goes with spaces, I think. But yeah, so again, it follows a certain style, and it keeps your code clean and it's readable to everybody else. Or like a lot of other stuff, for example, unified spaces between codes. For example, one of the things that is recommended when you write a code in Python is that, for example, this is a function, and if you want to write a function, if you want to write code, one of the things they don't recommend is they recommend leaving 2 spaces between the function and the next line. All right, so end of the function and next line. For example, if you can, for example, right here, if you want, or something like that. Again, you can write it right here, it's fine, but it's not recommended, right? It's not recommended, and it's just like it's gonna make your code a lot more unclean, right? So in Python, it is recommended that you actually let's just make this clean. So in Python, it's recommended that you actually have 2 spaces between the functions and like the next line of code. So if you actually have 1 space, one of the things that it's going to tell you is that it's expected 2 blank lines after the class or function definition, found 1. So as it tells you, hey, you might want to add 2. Now you don't have to, but it says, hey, add 2, and when I add 2, the yellow line that we just had kind of goes away. See, so it has a really nice linter built in, which is going to help you just keep your code a lot cleaner. All right, so anyways, that's that. Next one is the structure. So another thing that Python, the PyCharm is going to give you, the code structure, which is really, really cool. I actually like this a lot. So when you write complicated projects, you're going to have probably dozens of files with probably tens, if not hundreds, of different variables, functions, and all sorts of things, right? So think about it that way. It's going to be a pretty complex code. So let's say you're just writing something and you want to access a certain type of function in your program, and you don't know where's that function, where can I find it? One of the features that the PyCharm has is that on this side there is a tab called structure. When you look at the structure, it's going to tell you the certain types of variables that you actually have, and you can actually click on it, and it's going to take you directly to the file. How cool is that? How cool is that? It's just gonna give you the structure, and you can actually play with the settings and everything if you want. But again, it's really, really interesting, and it gives you the structure of the program, and you can actually access it. So it's really, really cool. You can click on it, it's gonna take you there, and you can play with it. Anyways, so just wanted to point out a few interesting stuff with the PyCharm. But again, we will talk about more and more stuff that is really specific and special in PyCharm later on, and I think it's just the best way for you to learn it is just kind of you see it in action and use it for yourself instead of just me having to explain it to you. All right, so anyways, let's get started and let's talk about another tool, and then let's move forward and start programming in our IDEs. All right, so I'll see you in the next one, guys.